What do you mean you don't have the keys? The house is empty. That can't be right, I said, my knuckles white as I gripped my phone. The neighbor across the street was staring at me from his porch, watching me pace back and forth in front of what used to be my home. My name is Jasmine Rojas, and I had just driven 4 hours from my university to Bakersfield for spring break, only to find my childhood home with a for sale sign hammered into the front lawn. The windows were bare, no curtains, no furniture visible inside. 3 black garbage bags sat on the porch like unwanted guests. When I peeked inside one, I saw my clothes, my books, fragments of the life I'd left behind when I went to college. Your father said you should have called first, my Uncle Thomas said, his voice hesitant on the other end of the line. They moved last week. Didn't they tell you? No, I said, the word barely making it past the lump in my throat. They didn't tell me anything. I hung up and called my father. Each ring felt like an eternity. Hello. His voice was flat, emotionless. Dad? The house is empty. There are garbage bags with my stuff on the porch. What's going on? A pause. We moved. You're an adult now, deal with it. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, stunned. I called back, straight to voicemail. I tried my mother's phone. The same. My younger brother's phone, no answer. Just like that, I had been erased from their lives. No warning, no goodbye, not even the courtesy of a forwarding address. I stood there, watching the sunset cast long shadows across what used to be my front yard. The maple tree my father and I had planted when I was 8 still stood tall, its branches reaching toward a house that no longer belonged to us. I had sent part of my scholarship money home every month. I had maintained a 3.9 GPA in pre-law while working part-time. I had been the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who never caused trouble. And this was my reward. I didn't cry, not then. Instead, I picked up those garbage bags and loaded them into my car. I checked into a motel for the night, laying out my salvaged possessions on the scratchy bedspread. A few textbooks, winter clothes I'd left behind, a broken picture frame with a photo of my family at the beach 3 summers ago. Everyone smiling. Everyone a liar. That night, I made a decision. If they wanted to erase me, I would return the favor. I would cut all ties and I would build something they could never take away from me. I grew up believing family meant unconditional support. My parents had immigrated from Mexico before I was born, and family first was practically our household religion. My father worked double shifts at the manufacturing plant, and my mother cleaned houses. They reminded us daily of their sacrifices. We came here with nothing, so you could have everything, my father would say over dinner. Education is your ticket. I took those words seriously. While other kids went to parties, I studied. When my high school friends got summer jobs at the mall, I interned at the local courthouse. My acceptance to university on a pre-law scholarship was supposed to be the first return on their investment. My younger brother Gabriel was different. He struggled in school, preferred video games to books, and had been caught shoplifting twice. Yet my parents never threatened to kick him out. They defended him, supported him, forgave him. He's finding his way, they'd say. Maybe that's why their abandonment blindsided me. The responsible daughter discarded, while the troubled son remained under their wing. That night in the motel, I called Professor Wilkins, my constitutional law instructor, who had become something of a mentor. They just left? She asked, disbelief evident in her voice. Yes, I'm not sure. What to do next? I can't exactly go back to the dorms during break, and My voice cracked, the emotion finally breaking through. Listen to me, Jasmine. Come stay with me until the dorms reopen. We'll figure this out together. Professor Wilkins lived alone in a Victorian house filled with books and 2 elderly cats. She gave me her guest room and a key. No time limit, she said. Focus on your studies. That spring break, instead of relaxing, I threw myself into research. Professor Wilkins had connected me with a summer legal internship at Riverton Law Partners, specializing in housing discrimination cases. The irony wasn't lost on me. Channel it, Professor Wilkins advised over tea one evening. The best advocacy comes from personal experience. I nodded, thinking about the family photos I'd found crumpled at the bottom of one garbage bag. My quinceañera, high school graduation, all the milestones my parents had celebrated, only to discard the evidence like trash. That night, I blocked their numbers. All of them. My father, mother, brother, even aunts and uncles who might enable their behavior. If anyone asked about my family, I simply said, "We're not in touch." No dramatic story. No plea for sympathy. I was rebuilding from scratch, and sentimentality had no place in the foundation. The summer internship at Riverton Law Partners changed everything. What started as basic research and coffee runs quickly evolved when my supervisor, attorney Elainer Grayson, discovered my knack for connecting with clients. "You have something rare, Jasmine," she told me after I helped calm a young mother facing eviction. "You actually listen." I was assigned to assist with intake interviews, meeting families being pushed out of affordable housing by developers, elderly tenants facing illegal rent increases, students dealing with predatory landlords. Their stories resonated with me in ways I couldn't articulate. One evening, after a particularly grueling day interviewing 3 families from the same apartment complex, all served simultaneous eviction notices, I stayed late organizing case notes. Elainer found me there at 9 p.m., surrounded by papers. "Burning the midnight oil?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. "These families have nowhere to go," I said. "The developer's offering them 2 weeks in a motel as compensation for breaking their leases early." Elainer sighed. "Unfortunately, that's often more than the law requires." "But it's not right," I insisted. 2 weeks isn't enough time to find new housing, especially with security deposits and first month's rent. These people will end up homeless. The system is broken." Elainer agreed. "So what are you going to do about it?" That question lingered with me for days. What could I, a second-year pre-law student with an internship, possibly do? The answer came unexpectedly during a mandatory university financial aid seminar. The presenter mentioned that students could apply for social innovation grants, seed money for projects addressing community needs. The application deadline was just 2 weeks away. I stayed up 3 nights straight, drafting a proposal for a housing advocacy program specifically for students and low-income families. I called it Safe Space Initiative. Elainer helped me refine the legal aspects, and Professor Wilkins reviewed the final application. While waiting to hear back about the grant, I received the first of many calls from my parents. It came 6 months after they had abandoned me. A voicemail from my father. "Jasmine, your mother is worried about you. Call us." No apology, no explanation. Just an expectation that I would respond to their summons like an obedient daughter. I didn't call back. 3 days later, another voicemail. "This silent treatment is childish, Jasmine. We're your family." I saved the message, but didn't respond. The calls increased in frequency. Sometimes my father, sometimes my mother, occasionally my brother. Their tones ranged from demanding to pleading. None acknowledged what they had done. When the university awarded me the Social Innovation Grant, $25,000 to launch Safe Space Initiative, I didn't share the news with them. When I was offered a paid position at Riverton to continue my work through the academic year, I celebrated with Professor Wilkins and Elainer instead. My new family was forming around me, people who supported me not out of obligation, but out of genuine respect and care. By January, the Safe Space Initiative had assisted 23 students fighting wrongful evictions. We operated out of a converted storage room at Riverton Law Partners, with 2 volunteer paralegals and a rotating schedule of law students earning clinical hours. Most days, I rushed from classes to the office, spending evenings reviewing cases and refining our approach. The work was exhausting but fulfilling. Each family that maintained housing, each student who avoided homelessness, felt like a personal victory. I was building something meaningful from the wreckage of my own displacement. The Watkins Foundation was offering social justice grants, a substantial award, enough to hire staff and rent proper offices. The application process was grueling. I spent weeks drafting and redrafting our proposal, gathering testimonials from clients, and compiling data on housing insecurity among students. The final document was 47 pages, detailing Safe Space's mission, methodology, and measurable impact. 2 days after submission, I received a call from an unfamiliar number with my hometown's area code. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Jasmine, it's Mrs. Hernandez, from next door. Our former neighbor. I hadn't spoken to her since the day I found the house empty." "I hope it's okay that I called," she continued. "Your brother gave me your number. He said you might not answer if you saw their names on caller ID." My defenses rose immediately. "If this is about reconnecting with my parents..." No, she interrupted. "Well, not directly. It's about the house. Your old house. Someone broke in last night. The police think they were looking for valuables, but of course the place is empty. Your father asked me to check if perhaps you had come back for something. He didn't want to report a break-in if it was just you." I nearly laughed at the absurdity. "I haven't been back since that day, Mrs. Hernandez. Besides, I don't have keys anymore." "That's what I told him," she sighed. "But there's something else. The intruder left something behind, an envelope with your name on it. The police gave it to me since I'm watching the property." My heart skipped. "What does it say?" "I haven't opened it," she said. "It's addressed to you, but it looks official. There's a law firm's name on it." "Official mail at my old address?" "No one should be sending me legal documents there. I'd updated my address months ago." "Can you open it?" I asked. "Just tell me what it says." I heard paper tearing. Then silence. "Mrs. Hernandez? It's about your grandmother's estate," she said finally. "Your maternal grandmother, in Mexico." My grandmother had died when I was 13. I barely remembered her. "What about her estate?" "It says you've inherited property in Oaxaca," Mrs. Hernandez read slowly. "And there's a bank statement, Jasmine. It shows a balance of over $400,000. My mind reeled. That can't be right. My grandmother lived simply. She didn't have that kind of money. The letter says the property was developed after her death. Resort condominiums. Your portion is the proceeds from the sale of 2 units. I grabbed a pen, scribbling as Mrs. Hernandez dictated the law firm's contact information. My hand shook as I processed the implications. "Does it say when this inheritance became available?" Mrs. Hernandez shuffled some pages. "Yes, it was finalized last March. Last March, 1 month before my parents abandoned me. The timing couldn't be a coincidence. They had known about my inheritance, and they had left me behind anyway." The Watkins Foundation called while I was still processing the inheritance bombshell. We'd been selected as finalists for their grant and needed to prepare a presentation for their board. Under normal circumstances, this would have been cause for celebration. The foundation's backing would transform Safe Space from a scrappy student initiative into a legitimate nonprofit. But I was distracted, my thoughts circling back to my grandmother's unexpected legacy. After consulting with Elainer, I contacted the Mexican law firm handling the estate. They confirmed everything. The inheritance was legitimate. The money was mine. And most tellingly, notification had been sent to my parents, as my legal guardians, over a year ago when I was still 19. "They kept this from me," I told Professor Wilkins during one of our regular dinners. "They knew I had this inheritance coming and still put my stuff in garbage bags." She set down her fork. "Have you considered why?" "Money," I said bitterly. "They probably thought they deserved it more than I did." "Perhaps," she conceded, "but hiding an inheritance is difficult. You would have found out eventually. Maybe they were planning to tell you on their terms, to make you grateful. Dependent." I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. "Or maybe they never planned to tell me at all." The inheritance funds were transferred to my account 3 days before the Watkins Foundation presentation. I hadn't decided what to do with the money, but its presence offered a strange security. For the first time since finding my childhood home empty, I felt financially untethered from my past. The Watkins presentation was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in May. I arrived at the Foundation's downtown offices an hour early, reviewing my notes in the sleek waiting area. Our proposal requested $300,000 over 3 years to expand Safe Spaces services beyond the university to the broader community. Elena arrived 20 minutes before the scheduled time, impeccable in a charcoal suit. "Ready?" she asked, sitting beside me. "As I'll ever be," I replied, straightening my own carefully selected navy blue blazer. "Professional, but not intimidating." "Ready?" she asked, sitting beside me. "As I'll ever be," I replied, straightening my carefully selected blazer. Navy blue, professional but not intimidating. "The board can seem formal," she warned, "but they care about impact. Focus on the human stories, how Safe Space changes lives." We were escorted into a boardroom where 8 people sat around a polished table. I recognized several from my research: local business leaders, philanthropists, a former judge. The Foundation's director, William Watkins, himself rose to greet us. "Ms. Rojas, Miss Grayson, welcome," he said, gesturing toward the presentation area. "We've been impressed by your written proposal. Show us why Safe Space deserves our support." I connected my laptop to their projector and began. The presentation outlined Safe Space's journey from student project to community resource, highlighting key cases and systemic impacts. Eleanor chimed in with legal context, explaining how our model filled gaps in existing services. 20 minutes in, as I was describing our vision for expansion, the boardroom door opened. A Foundation assistant whispered something to Mr. Watkins, who nodded. "I apologize for the interruption," Mr. Watkins said. "Ms. Rojas, there are some people here claiming to be your family. They're quite insistent on speaking with you." My heart stopped. "My family. They say it's urgent," he added, looking uncomfortable. "We can ask them to wait until we finish." Eleanor touched my arm supportively. "Your call, Jasmine." I took a steadying breath. After months of unanswered calls, my parents had tracked me down to perhaps the most important professional moment of my young career. The timing couldn't be worse, or more telling. "Please tell them I'll speak with them after the presentation," I said, my voice remarkably steady. "This is too important to interrupt." Mr. Watkins nodded approvingly, and the assistant left. I turned back to the presentation, but inside, my mind was racing. What could possibly be so urgent after nearly a year of silence? I finished the presentation on autopilot, my voice professional despite the emotional turbulence beneath. The board asked insightful questions which I answered thoroughly, determined not to let my personal drama affect this opportunity. When they finally thanked us and promised a decision within 2 weeks, I felt hollow rather than hopeful. "You were excellent," Eleanor said as we gathered our materials, especially under the circumstances. Outside the boardroom, my parents and Gabriel waited in the reception area. My mother rose when she saw me, her face a complex mix of hope, fear, and determination. My father remained seated, his expression guarded. Gabriel hovered awkwardly between them, looking everywhere but at me. "Jasmine," my mother began, stepping forward. "We need to talk." Eleanor squeezed my shoulder. "I'll give you privacy, call me later." I nodded gratefully, then turned to my family. "Why are you here? How did you even find me?" "We saw the newspaper article about your housing program," my mother explained. "It mentioned the Watkins presentation today. We've been trying to reach you for months." "I'm aware," I said coolly. 247 calls is hard to miss. My father finally stood. "This has gone on long enough, Jasmine. You're being childish." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Childish? I came home to find my belongings in garbage bags. You sold our house without telling me. You abandoned me, and I'm the childish one?" "We made a mistake," my mother said, her voice trembling. We want to make it right. Now you want to make it right? I asked. After a year? After I've rebuilt my entire life without you? Why now? Gabriel shifted uncomfortably. Just hear them out, Jazz. I know about the inheritance, I said flatly. Is that why you're suddenly interested in reconciliation? Because the money came through? My father's face darkened. You've always been so quick to judge. And you've always been so quick to discard, I countered. You knew about my grandmother's estate last March. You kept it from me. Then threw me away. My mother's eyes widened. You know? I know everything, I confirmed. The question is, what do you want now? The foundation's reception area wasn't the place for a family reckoning, so we relocated to a nearby coffee shop. I sat across from them, maintaining physical and emotional distance as they attempted to explain the inexplicable. We were ashamed, my mother admitted, cradling her untouched coffee. The foreclosure, your father lost his job, and I couldn't make enough cleaning houses. We couldn't tell you. So instead of asking for help, you abandoned me, I said, keeping my voice low and controlled. We found out about your grandmother's money right after you left for spring semester. My father explained. The lawyers said you'd inherit when you turned 21. We thought if we moved, started over somewhere new, we could fix our finances before you found out. By selling the house and leaving me with nothing. We panicked. Your father thought you would be better off without our problems, my mother said. You had your scholarship, your university friends. And now, I pressed, why the sudden change of heart? They exchanged glances. Gabriel spoke up. They made a terrible mistake, Jazz. They know that now. The safe space thing, my father added gruffly. In the newspaper, we saw what you've accomplished, and we realized we'd lost something precious. Your successful daughter, I translated bitterly. No, my mother insisted. Our family, our connection. I studied them. These people who had shaped my early life and then shattered it. My mother looked older now, gray strands prominent in her dark hair. My father seemed diminished somehow, his shoulders slumped beneath his worn jacket. Gabriel had grown an inch, his boyish features were maturing. I've built a new life, I said finally. New connections, people who value me regardless of my accomplishments. We're still your family, my father insisted. I met his gaze steadily. Family doesn't put your belongings in garbage bags. Rising from the table, I placed enough cash to cover all our drinks and prepared to leave. I don't need closure. I've moved forward, but if you truly want to make amends, start by respecting my boundaries. As I walked away, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not vindication, but a quiet strength. I had faced my abandoners on my own terms and walked away whole. The next morning, the Watkins Foundation called. Safe Space Initiative had been awarded the full grant amount, with an additional $50,000 for operational expenses. That afternoon, a national news outlet contacted me about featuring Safe Space in a segment on innovative approaches to housing justice. When the story aired 2 weeks later, it reached millions of viewers, including, I later learned, my parents. They never called again. Sometimes, the family you build yourself becomes stronger than the one you were born into. And as I looked toward my future, I knew I would never again measure my worth through someone else's eyes.